Flora's hooves had been bruised heavily by her restraints, the final one coming off upon removal of the last 2 screws holding it down. 2 years of endless torture and pain had shone through upon Flora's limbs being freed, barely able to move a muscle as Xena and Sassy had taken hold of her front legs and attempted to pull her from the circle. The poor mare had yelped upon her tender and sore limbs being gripped so tightly, but she knew that her saviors were not trying to harm her, so she powered through. However, upon tugging with all of their might, she hadn't even moved an inch, seeming as if she were part of the concrete floor.
Don't move her! You'll rip her in half before you even get her out of the circle!
Sassy and Xena gasped in horror, immediately halting any further attempt to get Flora out. Apple Bloom definitely knew more about the thing pinning Flora to the ground than them, so they believed her and let their poor rescue victim go gently.
I know you want to get her out of here, but unless it's done right, you do more harm than good.
Apple Bloom explained lightly, knowing the time was desperate.
Then what's the right way, Apple Bloom?
The young filly sighed heavily before answering, knowing the answer would press the situation into an even higher level of danger.
We must break Applejack's connection with what's holding Flora down, and I think y'all know how it already works if you came back.
The answer was clear, and both Sassy and Xena knew what it meant. They had to do what Flora had set out to do 2 years ago, and that was to somehow connect that demoness's soul to the scrunchie by stabbing it into her flesh. In other words, all hell was about to break loose.
We do. We also know what it implies. A direct confrontation and fight with her.
Apple Bloom nodded.
Right. However, I know my sis, and I know she has one weakness. One you can use to your advantage.
Eyebrows immediately raised, but who better to know anything and everything about Applejack than the one who knew her best? If a weakness existed, Apple Bloom would certainly know of it.
We are listening.
Apple Bloom nodded again.
Simply put, my sis ain't one to immediately kill her victims. She likes to play with them in a cruel way of giving them a sense of false hope. We can use her own tactic against her by fooling her into thinking there's only one of you, and while she's distracted, another can attack her from behind. There's 3 of us and 1 of her, so she can't handle all of us at once.
Even with her demonic abilities? Flora's friends got ripped to shreds by her tendons and ligaments that extended across the entire length of a wide room. So are you absolutely sure she wouldn't just be able to do the same thing again?
Apple Bloom nodded as a response.
I spent the past years studying her tactics, ever since the night the farmhouse manifested again. I've watched her behaviors very closely, and it's clear she'd rather chase victims than immediately kill them. It's her way of having fun with them. If she caught wind of y'all's presence, she'd probably slowly cut you down rather than immediately make you a soulbound to the farmhouse, seeing she knows she can't die.
The reasoning made absolute sense, so Xena and Sassy agreed, nodding their heads as they awaited the likely hell in Equestria to come next.
So, how do we get her here?
Oh, that's easy.
Apple Bloom answered confidently, turning to Flora.
Flora, can you do something to draw my sister's attention here?
While Flora couldn't move, she could hear and uttered a mild groan as a way of confirming she knew what to do.
All right. You 2 help me get the restraints back on, but don't bother with the screws. We gotta make her seem convincing, right?
That forced a smile to form on the two mares' faces as they placed the shackles back onto Flora's limbs, making sure they remained free of the screws that would usually lock them in place. After making Flora appear bound again, Apple Bloom directed them to the next course of action.
Okay, now, it's time for y'all to make a decision. Which one of y'all is willing to stay down here and face Applejack with me? One will hide in the food cupboard upstairs until AJ is in the basement and you can sneak down while she's distracted by whoever chooses to remain here.
With zero hesitation, Sassy stepped forward.
I will. I promised to keep Flora safe from that witch, and I still intend to, no matter the cost.
No pony objected, knowing she was dead set on the task. She was terrified to face that demon, but she'd come here knowing she would, so she decided it was best to just get it over with. Xena just allowed it to happen, knowing this was basically Sassy's own personal way of atoning for what happened 2 years ago, responding by heading upstairs to hide, leaving Sassy and Apple Bloom to face the monster that had led Flora to this point.
Are you ready, Sassy?
Yes, but I don't recall ever telling you my name. How do you know it?
Apple Bloom answered by pointing at Flora, drawing tears to Sassy's eyes almost immediately.
The first days she was in prison here, she yelled endlessly for you and the other lady. She called and called up until one day she just stopped, accepting the cruel truth. The fact that you're here now shows just how much y'all care for her, almost like a guardian or even a mother.
Well, I was practically one for her for a year, given she'd given up on hope when I first met her. All I want is for her to be free and happy again. She's still so young, has been through so much, and deserves a life where she can live like some pony her age should.
Then make it that way. She can still be saved, so if you want that kind of ending for her, then do your best to make it reality. My life was turned into a nightmare all because I did the right thing, and I never gave up on trying to end my family's acts by leading ponies to the truth. That's why I'm here now, because I know I can stop them, but it had to be the right time, place, and with ponies who could do what I failed to.
Sassy felt a pang of sadness stab her heart, having heard the horrifying story of Apple Bloom's demise from her mother not long after she'd started caring for Crimson. In a way, she could see Flora and Apple Bloom, except for the fact that Flora was still alive. They'd both exposed truths, only to be silenced in different ways. But Sassy refused to allow history to repeat again by letting Flora lose her sanity to the apples. The madness had to end, once and for all.
Apple Bloom, you didn't fail. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening. We won't let history repeat again. And today, your family will pay the price for their crimes. We won't fail. For you and Flora.
Apple Bloom smiled.
Then let's get to it.
The plan was set, and now all Apple Bloom and Sassy could do was hope that Applejack wasn't smart enough to see through their plan. Sassy would hide in a dark corner with the scroungy while Apple Bloom attacked her, then carefully find an opening to stab Applejack with the blade. It seemed simple enough, but Sassy needed the right angle to avoid being seen, and that would all depend on Apple Bloom's ability to keep her sister from knocking her off. It was absolutely risky, but it was all they could do. So it was time to see if they stood a chance against an interdimensional demon.
You ready, Sassy?
I am.
Alright, then once I'm hid, Y'all do your thing, Flora.
Apple Bloom finished, walking into a corner draped in darkness. Once she was set, she took a deep breath, nervous of what was to come as soon as Flora acted to draw Applejack there. She'd face her sister, the one who killed her in cold blood 2 decades prior, once again. A fact that she found terrifying, but she had prepared for this encounter ever since the day she'd found her way back to the farmhouse. She'd waited so long for this moment, and her desire for vengeance had burned so hot and bright like the sun in anticipation for it. She was ready to give her sister her comeuppance for what she'd done over 20 years ago, and wouldn't give up until it happened.
Go, Flora.
Apple Bloom alerted as a signal, to which Flora started to do one thing Applejack hated. She thought of happy memories through her pain and suffering, something that her twisted torturer forbade due to it breaking her from falling into absolute insanity. It would surely draw her to the basement, and upon hearing some clearly irritated hoofsteps from above, it was clear it had worked. In less than a minute's time, Bittersweet Applejack had descended the stairs and was now in full light to Sassy and Apple Bloom. It was a terrifying sight. A pony with no head attached to their necks standing and moving as if they still had one. However, what happened next was even more disturbing to Sassy, now seeing the nightmare that had led Flora to her in full light.
What did I tell you about thinking of those happy times, Goldilocks? I thought we had a deal.
The headless demon spoke naturally in a clearly irritated tone, shocking Sassy beyond belief. Applejack added to her punctuation by kicking Flora's side, causing said victim to yelp in pain. Sassy wanted to immediately jump out and help her patient, but knew she couldn't and was aware that Flora probably knew this would happen upon agreeing to antagonizing her torturer. She held her ground, awaiting the right moment to strike.
We give ya an eternal existence with our hospitality, and in return, y'all just obey and listen to my every command. Is that so hard to do? Or do you need another reminder of what happens if you decide to play games with me?
Flora couldn't physically respond, and while Applejack knew that, she didn't care. She'd take every opportunity to toy with her pets bound against their will.
Stubborn little bitch. I guess another lesson is needed after all.
Applejack lifted her right hoof up high above Flora's own, planning to break it, up until the horror was stopped by a sudden exclamation.
Seems your ways haven't changed after all.
Apple Bloom called out, stepping from her coat of shadow and immediately causing Applejack to turn her attention in her direction. The sight of the sister she'd killed gladly made her laugh, finding her presence interesting.
Well, if it ain't the good-for-nothing rotten apple, or should I call you a broke-neck traitor? Come back for another round of Big Sis Knows Best, you worthless lowlife?
Apple Bloom stood strong, not even feeling hurt by her sister's insults.
No pony here's a traitor except you, sis. Or should I call you Bittersweet Applejack?
I prefer the Bittersweet Applejack title. Really catches my charm and personality. Something that you wouldn't understand.
I understand everything, but what I don't understand is what in tarnation happened to my big sis. One day you were there as the same loving and caring sibling I knew, but then you came back from that trip and everything changed. What happened that made you become so cruel and heartless?
Applejack gasped, the words having hit something in her cold and dark heart.
You selfish little bitch. I did what I had to get our family out of debt. I gave us an answer to that ungrateful, filthy rich's ways and saved our home from falling into his gritty clutches. You're calling me the villain? Rotten Apple, you're saying me saving our farm is the wrong thing to do. Listen to yourself and call me the bad pony again.
Saving our home wasn't a bad thing, AJ. It's how you did it. Killing ponies was never the answer to our problems. We have more ways to resolve the issue of losing the farmhouse, and you know it. If you truly did this to save the farmhouse, then why did it continue after saving the farm from debt?
Applejack winced, knowing Apple Bloom had countered her perfectly. She clenched her right hoof as a way of having no response to her sister's point.
Because you're sick in the head. Once you started killing, you didn't want to stop because you enjoyed watching others suffer and scream. You're sick, AJ, and you're a traitor to pony kind.
Applejack was hit by the truth, but it didn't truly affect her. She still had the higher ground and knew Apple Bloom was no threat to her.
So fucking what, Rotten Apple? You think your little protests are gonna change me? I'm already living the life I wanna with no pony doing anything to stop me. So why would I even listen to your hopes of your old and pathetic version of a big sister ever coming back? Newsflash, she's long gone, dead and buried beyond any point of return.
I know that, and accepted it in the moment you killed me. Whatever sister I had before that day disappeared as soon as she killed another pony. And now my desire and purpose is to not change ya, but to end ya once and for all.
Applejack laughed again, feeling no threat from Apple Bloom's words as the filly secretly hinted to Sassy to start approaching the demented monster from behind. Sassy caught it, and despite being absolutely terrified, she began a very slow and light approach to the twisted and headless mare.
And how do you plan to end me, Rotten Apple? You're all alone in an existence where every pony is under our control, unable to even physically touch any pony. You all have no chance against your own family, and you know it.
Sassy was nearly in striking distance, so Apple Bloom kept egging her sister on.
You're wrong, AJ. I've prepared long and hard for this moment, and I've found a way to destroy ya. Not to mention, I recall a certain stallion ending you once, so if you can be stopped once, it can happen again.
That vermin killing me was the best thing that could have happened to me. I'm unkillable now, thanks to him, and would rather be like this than a mortal at risk of being killed by the simplest of tactics. I'm more powerful than you can imagine, Rotten Apple, and will never die.
Suddenly, a sharp pain struck Applejack's right flank, catching her off guard and putting her into a temporary stun. Sassy had stabbed the scrunchie into Applejack's flesh successfully, pulling it out before the twisted demoness could pull any tricks. The headless monster turned to see who had sneak attacked her, immediately recognizing the mare from Flora's memories.
You! How dare you blemish my body! You'll pay dearly for that!
Sassy received a kick from both of Applejack's back legs in the form of an uppercut, the scrunchie escaping from her grasp and colliding to the floor. The strike had sent Sassy back at least 5 yards, landing on her back with a hard and painful thump. Applejack had turned her sights from Apple Bloom and was now setting her sights on the one who'd defiled her rear, likely planning to kill or slowly and severely injure Sassy to eventual death. What was weird was that nothing was happening. Sassy had managed to puncture her, but there was no sign of a change occurring. Had they done something wrong?
I know you prissy little bitch. You're Goldilocks' little savior. Oh, let me tell ya, she yelled day after day for ya, hoping and praying that you'd come save her. But you never came, and you made your poor little patient suffer. She held on to hope for so long, but once she knew you weren't ever coming to save her, she lost the will to even believe in ya.
The insults hurt Sassy, but she knew in her heart that Flora had never come to such conclusions. Applejack was just trying to throw her into a state of anger where she'd act reckless and be taken over easily by the demon approaching her. The lead apple wasn't any less terrifying, but Sassy could see something off about her, almost as if she were taunting out of desperation. Then she saw the scrunchie, its blade starting to glow a red color, and the constant crimson hue that had plagued the area beginning to dissipate like a dying light bulb. The plan was working, and the effects had just been delayed. Sassy couldn't be reckless now, and needed to play her cards smart. Then the effects began to take full effect, and Applejack began to feel every single bit of it.
Well, what in tarnation have you done?
Your life is officially now in our hooves, sis.
Apple Bloom stated, picking up the scrunchie from the ground, and in tandem, the ceremonies that had been destroying Flora's being fell from its levitated position. It landed on Flora's chest as nothing more than a husk of dead flesh and stone, absent of any further type of negative energy, as a very loud intake of breath and coughs escaped its once victim. Applejack gasped in fear, now aware of what Sassy had done to her. However, the danger was far from over, given until the blade was destroyed, would Applejack lose her immortality.
You dirty whores! I'll kill ya! I'll kill ya all!
The farmhouse began to shake as if an earthquake were occurring, its only source of connection to reality now severed. That meant time was certainly of the essence, and if they were going to try and kill Applejack, they had to do it now. However, a blade like the scrunchie couldn't just be destroyed by brute force. It had to be shattered by magic. And the only pony that could do that was Xena.
Xena, now!
Sassy yelled, signaling said pony above that it was her time to do her part. The sudden exclamation alerted Xena, rushing out of the cupboard and downstairs to absolute chaos. Upon seeing Applejack in her current state of shock, she had a momentary moment of hesitation, up until Apple Bloom knocked her out of it.
Xena! Cast a spell! Now!
Apple Bloom yelled, presenting the scrunchie in her hooves as the target. Xena caught the filly's words, immediately moving to where she could cast it correctly. However, Applejack wasn't giving up that easily.
Oh, no you don't!
Applejack yelled, flinging a tendril from her open neck towards Apple Bloom. Apple Bloom saw it and dodged out of the way before the practical sharp whip could hit her. But there was a lot more where that came from, Applejack sending more bloody tentacles after her and Xena both.
If y'all think I'll go down so easily, you got another thing coming.
The scene was like something you'd only see in a horror movie, and a very weak Flora felt trauma hit her, remembering the night that those same tendrils had ripped Trevor to shreds. There were too many to count, and the current amount wouldn't even give Xena time to cast the spell, let alone focus. They needed a distraction, but Sassy was still struggling up to get up from Applejack's kick to her chin, likely having knocked the breath out of her. Time was running out, and if something didn't happen, they'd end up in an inescapable realm outside of reality. Then, Flora remembered something. Something she could use against Applejack. She was a valuable asset to that twisted mare, and to keep her family in reality, she needed Flora alive. In other words, she could attack Applejack without any chance of being killed. However, she needed to get up first. Despite her current state, Flora couldn't let her allies become victims. No, she refused to let another situation like that nightmare night 3 years ago happen again. With all of her might in her heart and soul, she raised herself up, struggling to stand straight with her hooves feeling like her bones were made of jello. However, this wasn't her first time having to find a way to do something with practically broken limbs, having to rehabilitate herself the first time she ever came to this house of horrors. She put herself into that same mindset as she had that night, pushing herself back onto her hooves and starting a slow limp towards the distracted Applejack. It was hard, but she pushed and pushed with all of the strength she had, knowing that this interception would determine the outcome. Just like that night with her piss-poor excuse of a father, she'd have to grab and hold on for as long as she could. Her allies and friends were depending on her, and upon reaching Applejack's rump, she leaped and grabbed as tightly around Bittersweet Applejack's half neck as she could. The sudden contact caught Applejack off guard, the hundreds of tendrils retreating as Applejack worked to get her pet off of her.
Get off me, you prissy slut!
She exclaimed, practically mimicking a bull trying to buck off a rider. Flora just held on like her life depended on it, not allowing the same outcome as what happened when she was too young and weak to subdue her dad. She refused it, keeping her grip and caring less about whatever Applejack did to her. On the outside, Apple Bloom and Xena quickly caught on to Flora's reason for attacking Applejack, the one able to do the big task, working fast to cast the spell that would destroy the scroungy for good. She knew time was little, and that Flora couldn't hold on for very long, so she put her hooves together as if she were praying and aimed all of her focus at the blade. The still embedded with demonic text began to move from the spell's effects, quivering in Apple Bloom's hooves with each passing second. Its red glow began to change to a more golden tone, the evil energy within fighting against Xena's magic, but due to Applejack's weakened state, was faltering fast. The demented mare's ability to fight back against Flora was dwindling rapidly, and Applejack could feel her only remaining life force being slowly destroyed with every other word Xena spoke. Her black heart felt as if it was being crushed in her chest, and she knew that if she didn't do something to save her soul, she'd lose. She grunted and struggled to do anything, up until she finally made a difficult decision. From the back of her neck, she shot out to tendril, piercing through Flora's body and hitting Xena directly. The sharp and long weapon struck Xena straight through her heart, going through her entire body and exiting out her back. Applejack had decided to kill Flora and return to that realm rather than be eliminated from existence completely. The strike to Flora's body had immediately caused her to let go, falling back and onto the ground with a pool of blood starting to follow. Xena was no better, her heart now punctured and her life beginning to falter in quick succession as Applejack pulled back her tendril. Xena immediately collapsed and began to cough and choke on massive amounts of her own blood. No sign of escaping eternal hell in the apple's domain in sight. While Apple Bloom had wanted to help her, being nothing more than a ghost, she couldn't physically touch Xena, so she had to just watch in horror as one of her allies slowly died. Sassy saw the carnage unfolding before her eyes, tears escaping her eyes at the sight of her practical daughter and comrade being slain by the monstrosity just in front of her. She too had wanted to help, to apologize to Xena and tell her she hadn't meant what she'd said earlier, but knew if she even tried, she'd be met with the same outcome. Therefore, there was literally nothing she could do, and knew all she could do was watch in absolute horror as her trusted friends perished to the hell that was Bittersweet Apple Acres. It was over. There was no way out now. She yelled endlessly, knowing there was nothing she could do. Not even Apple Bloom could move, knowing if she didn't run, she'd be trapped. She had never expected this, and now there was truly no way to stop her family's terror.
I'd rather live to find another opportunity to return to reality than be killed. I waited 20 years, so I can wait another 20. As long as I'm alive, I don't care. Now you all get to join the family and become pretty little slaves with the best hospitality we can offer ya. The apples always get what they want, and y'all never stood a chance.
Applejack had won, and it was a hard truth to accept. She and the others would continue their reign of terror, killing ponies by the hundreds or even thousands. Sassy knew she couldn't do anything, so she only did what she felt was right and attempted to join Flora in her slow process of dying. Strangely, the twisted mare didn't stop her, and it was clear why, given Applejack knew she'd already won and had the high ground. This little gesture as a final goodbye was nothing to her, and she'd kill Sassy not long after. Therefore, she had no reason to not allow it. Upon seeing her patient with nearly completely pale skin and tears in her eyes, Sassy shed her own, knowing this was it. She'd die to Applejack very soon, likely very slowly and painfully, so before she did, she comforted Flora.
Shh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay, Flora. I promise. It's gonna be okay.
Sassy comforted between tears. It was a lie, and she knew it, so she cut her words. She wanted these last moments to be ones where Flora felt peaceful, even if, beyond death, hell awaited her. Suddenly, one of Flora's hooves touched her face, her patient looking at her weakly.
Okay.
Sassy broke down, hugging her patient gently as she awaited whatever came next.
Pathetic mortals. Twi always said, friendship conquers all, but it's a dead-ass lie. Power truly overcomes all, and until you all realize that, you're nothing but as good as dead.
She raised her right hoof up above Sassy's head.
Don't worry, it'll only hurt for a sec, Sugar Cube. Now I bid you farewell, and welcome you all to the Apple family.
She was stopped abruptly, the sudden seizure making it seem as if she'd been shot or stabbed. It was just like before when Xena had been trying to destroy the scrunchie, her demeanor dwindling like a stone sinking in water. However, Xena was out of commission, so who could be left with the ability to impact a blade like that? Then, Sassy saw the blue magic aura coming from just at the bottom of the stairs, the light radiating from the horn of a pony no pony would have expected. Princess Flare stood with the scrunchie engulfed in her magic, gripping it tight like a vice grip. 5 minutes earlier. Just outside the front gate of the farmhouse, a flash of magical light sparked, the matriarch of Equestria manifesting from it, and said pony meeting the site of the very place that destroyed her. Her hoofing was unsteady and shaky as she looked upon the slaughterhouse, memories of the day that ended her original self, blazing flare, flickering before her like a strobe light. Her eyes widened in fear and horror as she attempted to think clearly on why she was even back here again. She'd sworn to never return here, but here she was, before the very home of the apples. The birthplace of the Apple family massacre, and where hundreds of her subjects had died due to her own stubbornness. It was appalling, but she knew it was real. While she'd seen it demolished over 20 years ago, the site before her was physically existent, housing a family of serial killers, hundreds of trapped souls, and terrors unbound. She wanted to leave as she had 2 years ago on Nightmare Night at City Hall, but refused to abandon her subjects again. Today was the day she'd face her fears, trauma, and fix what she'd broken by doing the right thing. Anxiety flooded her every sense, but she shrugged it away with a shake of her head, deciding which way to go. She knew nothing about the structure of the farmhouse, so in all honesty, she had no idea where she was even going. Only that her objective was clear: give the ponies elsewhere extra time. One other factor had come into play in the whole situation, and that was Flora. Crimson had been told of what Flare had done to Flora, and in the final moments of the matriarch hiding away in her throne room, Crimson had told her everything. That had been one of the many knives that cut deep into Flare's ultimate decision to come back to Bittersweet Apple Acres, guilt having struck her with her walls now knocked down to nothing but rubble. She and Flora were very similar, and she'd put her into that ward without even a moment's hesitation. Something she now regretted, but knew she could fix by saving the young mare she'd tossed into the abyss. With that, she had an idea of where to go, given how Crimson had described it. The very place the apples had been found dead by cutting their own throats. The basement beneath the kitchen room. She'd seen the crime scene herself all those years ago, and she clutched her chest at the thought of even going back to that cellar. However, she had known this task would bring horrors back to her, and she was ready to face and overcome them.
Don't give in, Flare. This will be very hard. But you can do this. For Mother, Auntie, your subjects, and that mare who saw you beyond your real status.
As if something had hurt her, the ground suddenly began to shake violently, seeming like an earthquake and nearly throwing Flare off balance. She managed to catch herself, knowing that whatever had caused this hadn't been because of tectonic plates shifting, but something happening in the farmhouse. Her assumption was proven even more true upon hearing an angry exclamation from just inside the house, its owner carrying a very clear country twang to their voice tone.
I'll kill ya! I'll kill ya all!
Flare knew who had spoken in clear anger and disgust, and the fact she did know made her unconsciously take a step back. However, she stepped back forward, not allowing her selfish self to take control of her actions.
Never again. I refuse to let any more of my subjects die. Face your fears, Flare.
She stated, knowing she couldn't be scared now. She took more steps, abandoning all of her fears, passing the gate, and eventually meeting the front door of the main house. She had no idea if she'd meet the main apple behind the door before her, but that didn't matter to her. What mattered now was saving the lives of others. With a very heavy amount of fear in her heart, she pushed open the door immediately being purged by the pungent smell of rot upon meeting the sight of the kitchen. Deja vu hit her with a barrage of emotions. The image of the day she had found out what was really happening behind the doors of Sweet Apple Acres manifesting before her eyes. Crime scene tape rolled out from one end of the kitchen to the other, along with the many detectives, Canterlot's forensic team, and several ponies with horrified expressions all throughout the area. That day was one of absolute shock and disbelief, due to the fact that no pony expected the apples, minus the youngest, to have ever been capable of such horrendous acts. It was truly a day that left a scar on the timeline of history itself, but little did ponykind know that Crimson's words and the crime scene of the apples' commitment to never be justified was only the beginning. Hundreds of bodies were found in the walls. 50+ victims in the process of being turned into trophies were found all throughout hidden areas beneath the farmhouse, and most disturbing, long dead ponies were found in an underground dungeon that was assumed to have been the first way the apples imprisoned and tortured their victims in the early years of the massacre. Sweet Apple Acres was literally a house of corpses, and the most horrid thing was that no pony outside of Ponyville knew a thing due to the apples having a relentless hold for 10 years. Something Flare had a hard time still believing, but history had told enough to be true. The apples had killed hundreds for a decade right under her nose, and that was a despicable and unbelievable truth she had a hard time accepting. But she had to, and did with a wipe of the vision of that crime scene from her mind, opening her eyes again to the sight of the kitchen again. No tape littered the vicinity as she looked around, spotting the very opening to the cellar where the abolishment decree had birthed in her mind, as much as where Applejack had shouted from. Upon seeing the entrance to the basement, she shivered, but quivered even more upon hearing a sudden commotion below. She could hear a struggle, a pony with a southern accent to their voice cussing another out, and another speaking something unintelligible at a rapid pace. She knew exactly who was right beneath her as much as what she needed to do next, knowing whoever was down there with Applejack was in danger. The moment had arrived, but could she face her greatest fear? No, she had to face the thing she was terrified of. No more running or hiding. With a deep breath, she approached the entrance with very light steps, only to halt instantly upon seeing something similar to a tentacle fling from the right side to the left at a pace so fast that she couldn't even determine. However, what she saw and heard next escalated everything to a whole new danger level. The sight of a familiar mare coming into view from the right end and falling onto her back. Flare jumped upon seeing a pool of blood starting to form around said pony, Flora Bloom being the one. She was dying, and wouldn't last much longer at the rate of blood she was losing. Flare knew she needed to act fast, but didn't know what to do. Then, she remembered Crimson's words.
You must stab her with a blade called a scrunchie, to break her connection with what's keeping her alive at all. The sacrimonious, something you'll know exactly what it is when you see it. And from there, destroy the blade with magic to break Applejack's immortality. After that, he's just as vulnerable as any regular pony, so any sort of fatal wound would kill her.
That was what Crimson had told her, and she hadn't been sure what he had meant, but upon seeing something on the ground, she knew it was what Crimson had called a sacrimonious, a flesh-covered stone slab fitting the bill very well. However, upon seeing the object, something else spiked in her mind, remembering Flora's dreams of said object and that it usually radiated a red glow. The sacrimonious was absent of any such light, and that told her that the first step of the needed task to be done was already finished. All that was left was to destroy the blade, so she glanced around the space to see if she could see any such object. She looked left to right and saw no knife in sight, but she knew it was in there. If these ponies had come here, they needed to have everything to kill Applejack. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here at all. With that deduction, she knew she needed to get closer, so she moved a little further down as quietly as possible. She made it down 3 steps, but halted upon seeing a headless Applejack walk towards Flora, stopping with her flank to Flare. Terrified at making one misstep, Flare was tempted to run, but knew this was her moment. She needed to spot that knife while Applejack was distracted. She shimmied a little further, getting a much better view of the room, looking around quickly. Upon reaching the left end, she spotted something that looked like a blade of some kind, glowing red and strangely resembling the thing from Flora's dreams. If anything were what Crimson had described as a scrunchie, that had to be it. So she took the only chance she had and grabbed the object with her magic. Flare held the scrunchie tightly in her magic, watching as the headless monster before her began to falter with every bit of pressure she applied. The negative energy permeating from the blade had made her struggle to hold it, but she held on, knowing she had the key to ending the Apple family massacre for good in her grasp. She gritted her teeth in pain at the evil force of Applejack's only shred of life force fighting her, to which Apple Bloom acted. The filly jumped onto Applejack's back and grabbed on as tight as she could, doing everything in her power to buy Flare time.
Do it! Now!
Apple Bloom demanded, using her spiritual energy to suppress Applejack's tendrils from attacking again. Her body radiated an angelic glow as she held on longer and longer, Applejack's weakened state unable to fight back.
Get off me! You'd really kill your sister? Your own blood?
As far as I'm concerned, Bittersweet Applejack, you're no sister of mine anymore. Destroy it! Now!
Flare, while affected by the concentrated evil attacking her, heard Apple Bloom. And with one final push and shout, the scrunchie finally caved to her magic force. In a sudden flash of powerful light, the object harboring the only remaining piece of Applejack's demonic self shattered into pieces, ending the monster's immortality for eternity. The impact of the blade's destruction immediately hit Applejack like a punch to the gut, all of her demonic abilities now gone and now mortal once again. The relentless practical earthquake finally stopped, and a silence filled with sorrow and bittersweetness replaced it. Apple Bloom lost her grip on her sister upon Applejack becoming a regular pony again, her spiritual form unable to physically touch or grip anything alive. She rose back to her hooves and eyed her once beloved sister, now nothing but a dying, headless husk of dead flesh. The sight hurt the filly, knowing she couldn't feel any sympathy for the demon before her. But at one point, it had been her sister, so she couldn't help but feel sadness in her heart.
It never had to come to this. I loved you, sis, but you chose to betray all of pony kind.
How could ya, after all I did to save the farm?
Applejack spoke in her final moments of existence, falling to her knees.
You never did this for the farm, but for yourself. Goodbye, AJ.
Apple Bloom finished, turning from her sister. Applejack attempted to reach out as she fell to the ground, but Apple Bloom gave the monster no attention. Was her attempt a sign of regret, or an attempt to kill one more victim out of spite? Neither mattered, because Applejack had burned her bridges long ago, and now she would pay for her crimes. Now mortal and composed of nothing but dead organs and flesh, there was no longer any life for her new form to continue living. Silence filled the room as Sassy, Flare, Apple Bloom, and Flora watched as the monster once known as the Element of Honesty began to turn to nothing but ash and disappear into an endless loop of limbo. Bittersweet Applejack was dead at long last, along with the rest of the Apple family. The nightmare was over at long last, but it didn't come without a cost. Xena had lost her life in an effort to end the madness, and soon the mare who aimed to stop it all would join her. Flora Bloom. Even after 3 years of endlessly trying to end the apples, she still ended up becoming one of the victims, and would likely join her friends in death very soon. However, she had a smile on her face in her final moments, knowing she had kept her promise to Henry and could now die peacefully. Sassy held Flora's right hoof in comfort, showing her that it was okay to pass on and that she wasn't alone.
Is it fatal?
The voice of Flare pulled Sassy from her moment with Flora. Sassy turned to her with a look of disgust.
Why would you care? You deliberately silenced and victimized her!
They were words of truth, and Flare couldn't deny it, but she accepted them.
Yes, I did. And your anger is justified. However, I've seen things in a new light and came here to do the right thing. I don't expect you to believe me, but if you let me approach her, this doesn't have to be her final day.
Sassy was conflicted, but given what she'd just done to save not just them, but all of ponykind, she was actually convinced.
Are you saying you can save her?
I just simply want to face my deserved justice, Miss Heartstone.
Flare answered, making an effort to approach Flora. Hesitantly, Sassy allowed access, the matriarch meeting and placing a hoof onto Flora's bloody chest. Upon the contact, Flora's near-dead eyes met Flare's, a mix of emotions going through her head.
I'll never expect you to forgive me, Flora, but as a way of saying I'm truly sorry for all that's happened, I will do what's right.
A blue light suddenly glowed from Flare's extended hoof, the magical display beginning to engulf Flora's wound and entire body in a warm embrace. Like a blue fire, the aura surrounding Flora's body felt warm and comforting, and as the sensation from the phenomenon took full hold, Flora began to feel life starting to return to her. It became all the more clear as to what Flare was doing upon her wound beginning to close and other additional injuries from Applejack's cruel tactics beginning to heal. Her bruises disappeared. Color returned to her flesh. Her yellowed eyes turned white. It was as if the impact of Flora's entire 3 years of hell were beginning to fade. Almost as if. Both Sassy and Flora immediately caught on to what Flare was actually doing, and upon finishing the task, it was all too apparent. It was as if the two had traded appearances, with Flora much more lively and colorful, and Flare now distraught and fatally wounded. She hadn't just saved Flora's life, she'd also taken all of the horrors she'd experienced over the past 3 years away from her. She'd given her life to assure Flora a better life. Flare struggled to even speak or move as her life force began to fade away to wherever she'd go after death, but managed to say one thing before she did completely.
Flora, promise me one thing.
Flora still wasn't fully recovered enough to verbally respond, so she answered with a nod of her head.
Don't let any of this be forgotten.
Princess Flare collapsed, and with one last exhalation of breath, passed away. Flora stared at the corpse of the mare she had once despised, her life having been spared and assured out of the sole purpose of doing the right thing. While she'd never forgive Flare for what she'd done to Detective Blackhorn, she could forgive her for what she'd done to her. Flare had done terrible things, but in the end, she had finally accepted her faults and made up for them. Carefully and cautiously, Flora got up and looked down at the body of her once matriarch, saying only 2 words in her mind as a close to the absolute 3 years of madness in her life.
I promise. Entry 121. 1 year later. It's been 1 year. And let's just say that the aftermath of any of the Apple Family massacre has been a mixed bag of emotions. That day it all finally closed was one that I truly will never forget, nor the ponies who we lost in the hardest and longest battle in my life. Xena and Princess Flare. I never thought I'd see the day some pony like Flare would see the error of her ways and basically sacrifice herself to save a pony she had originally tried to kill. When she showed up, destroyed that thing keeping Applejack alive, and saved my life, that was the moment I forgave her. However, I didn't forgive her for everything. Seeing Detective Blackhorn's death was unnecessary. And given she's part of the reason my life ended up how it did, yeah, not everything was forgivable. As she said that day, she accepted if I could never forgive her. And that, to me, was the ultimate sign that she'd seen the light. Xena, the mare who I had originally seen as nothing more than a zebra, who gave me silly potions on Nightmare Night. Her death had been one that left a mark, given she'd fought to the end to get me out, even doing the very thing that would end Applejack in the moment she was killed. I'll never forget her as long as I continue to live, and will always appreciate her for what she did. However, her death actually struck Sassy more, and until I learned why, did I understand. But her residual guilt didn't last long, given what happened when we finally left the place for the last time. Have you ever wondered what a galaxy would look like if you were ever within the sky's length away from it? Well, that's essentially what we saw upon stepping out of that house of horrors. The sky was a gigantic vortex of tiny little lights, all rising from the barn's portion of the farmhouse. The permanent blood moon had disappeared, and the trapped souls were now going to wherever ponies go after death. It had been a sight that had astounded Sassy and I, and it had only gotten even more extraterrestrial upon seeing who had been awaiting our arrival. Before us, in peace, had been Xena, Sarah, Trevor, and Henry, all smiling in happiness. Of course, it had been a moment of absolute emotional impact for me, knowing that their smiles meant that they had never held anything against me for my mistakes that night, and Sassy had seen the same with Xena. As much as I wish that moment could have lasted longer, they needed to pass on, so it was only a short phenomenon. However, it had been enough. All I wanted in the end was closure, and to free my friends from that hell I'd put them in. Knowing they are free and at peace is enough to allow me to move on from that chapter in my life and into a new one that would no longer hold what my previous ones held. My dickass of a father destroying my fullhood. Bittersweet Applejack nearly driving me into absolute insanity. And this time, I'd live my life without any darkness clouding my path. And that started with leaving everything behind. By that, I meant leaving Ponyville, given it had become a ghost town from the return of the Apple Family massacre. There was nothing left to hold on to. So with Sassy's support, I had packed up everything that was absolutely necessary and left. Ponyville had been stained with too much blood and was best to be left forgotten in history. I'll always carry the memories I had there dearly. But time goes on, so I must follow. And that began with a new mother. Yep, Sassy had adopted me not long after. And while I had become an adult by then, I had no plans on living a solo life anytime soon. Sassy and I had gone through hell together, escaped, and now needed each other to heal properly. While Flare had taken a majority of my trauma, fragments still remained. So before I even led my own life, I needed to stabilize myself. And it's funny actually. Given the day Sassy announced she was adopting me, I felt as if I was already her daughter. So I just giggled in response. That 1 year in the ward had already made me develop a mother-daughter relationship with her. And she reminded me of my actual mother a lot. Sassy was very caring, but had a side to her that set me straight if I ever stepped out of line. Just like a mom. Moving on to other things. The Canterlot Hill ward was closed after Princess Flare's records were investigated. Turns out there were many cases similar to mine. And of course, it's illegal to fraudulently lock up ponies. So the hell I'd occupied for 1 year was put into a grave. Not to mention the head of the ward, Dr. Redcross, was in prison for illegal administration of outlawed drugs. The pill Sassy had kept out of the muzzles of the patients had turned out to be something that had been made illegally hundreds of years ago. It was used as a torture agent against really bad ponies in the Equestrian War, and did way worse than what Sassy saw from the outside. Redcross was also found guilty of several accounts of sexual assault and other things I don't even want to say. Let's just say, Sassy got her revenge, and no longer works for a monster that was close to Applejack's level of evil. Sassy now works a much more suitable job for somebody like her, and always has a smile on her face every time I see her. My case in the ward's records was completely confiscated by our new matriarch, Princess Cadence, who had been absolutely horrified by Flare's crimes, but accepted them as the truth. As I said I would, I most certainly kept my promise that Flare assigned me, and told Cadence the entire truth. No more will truths be hidden or covered by false stories, and as long as I live, I will speak of the horrors of the apples. I will assure that no more Apple Family massacres ever return or occur. And if one tries to, it'll be stopped faster than it could ever start. Lastly, Crimson. After the massacre was finally closed, he was able to go on and live a peaceful life. With no threat of the apples in any way whatsoever in existence, Crimson followed Sassy and I's lead and left behind the place that harbored all of his trauma. He was able to get treatments that erased the brand marks on his flanks, and after so long can actually smile on a whole new road in his life. Sassy and I visit him once a week to chat over a cup of tea, and every visit I've seen a whole new pony. He has color, looks well taken care of, and is actually happy. He still has trauma that will never be cured, but knowing he's well and actually socializes with ponies now makes me smile. While this all started as a quest for vengeance, it ended in changing lives for the better. Sassy saved ponies from being wrongly turned into zombies and locked up a legitimate monster. Crimson now has a life he can actually live happily without fear or pain. And I can finally move on from what happened that night into a whole new chapter of a life of happiness and a light guiding my way. So, what's next for me?
Flora?
Sassy breaks me from my immersion, sitting just outside my bedroom doorway. Oh, sorry, Sassy, I say, putting my pencil down. Did you need something?
Nope. Just wondering what you're doing.
She responds, walking up to my side. I turn my head and met her gaze. Nothing much. Just writing down my thoughts. She cracks a smile, putting her hoof on my right shoulder.
1 year. That's really how long it's been, hasn't it?
Her voice is still filled with a tinge of emotion, her mind probably spiraling back to that day. Hard to believe, isn't it? She nods, rubbing my shoulder.
What do you think?
She replies. I smile, keeping eye contact with her. I think we've grown a lot in 1 year, and will eventually grow out of what happened. For now, it's just best that we live our lives to the fullest.
And I think you're right. I also think it's good that you're documenting your thoughts. Because when you do grow past what happened, get married, and become a beautiful mother, you can look back on it and smile. You're easily one of the strongest mares I've ever known. And the fact you're here now, alive and happy, shows your strength and resilience. I'm absolutely sure your actual mother will be very proud.
I hold my smile, knowing that Sassy is absolutely right. It was a long, hard, and painful road to get here. But with the help of wonderful and strong ponies willing to walk with me, I overcame my demons yet again, just as Sarah, Trevor, and Henry did, out of nothing but the kindness of their hearts. While the story doesn't end completely happy, this isn't a fairy tale where good always wins. This is reality, composed of goods and evils, and morals don't determine who triumphs in the end. It's the sheer will to live and survive to see another day. My stomach growls, breaking me from my deep thoughts, and causing me to blush and Sassy to giggle.
Dinner's almost ready, don't worry. I'll call you when it's time to eat, alright?
I nod, watching as Sassy returns to the kitchen. Once she's gone, I turn back to my paper thoughts and notice the last sentence. So what's next for me? I think I already know the answer as I pick my pencil back up and begin to write again. What's next for me is to go eat dinner and enjoy the rest of my night with Sassy, just like I used to with Mom. So I do. Put down my pencil, close my diary, and get up from my desk to head out. The very delicious aroma of Sassy's homemade 4-cheese lasagna permeates my nostrils. With that, I close this chapter of my life with this final statement. My name is Flora Bloom, and I am a warrior and survivor of the return to Bittersweet Apple Acres. And that is my story.